Everyone, thank you for coming. And obviously, thank you for the Holts for coming. This is Sheila Holt-Orsted and Beatrice Holt. And I think what's really interesting to me, and I think many others too, is how both of you, and especially you, Sheila, got involved in becoming an advocate and an activist. When you first found out about what had happened with your drinking water to where we are today. Can you tell us the story of how that all opened up and occurred?
I'd like to begin by saying thank you to each and every one of you that took any part in helping get this settled and making Dickson County a safer place and not waiting for the next 100 years or more for it to clean up itself. I thank you on behalf of the Holt family. I thank you on behalf of people I'll never meet that will grow up in that town. And I'd also like for you guys to join me in a standing ovation for Mitch, Michael, Selena, Al, everybody, yourself. Rebecca, we have so many stories to tell, and hopefully we'll get around to telling them. I have been accused of being a little long-winded, so I won't bore you guys, but I'd just like to start off by saying that how it all began was I came home for Christmas in 2002, and my father had cancer. My aunt, who is my dad's sister-in-law, I had an uncle that had died of cancer, neighbors. And I kept saying, this is strange. Why does everybody here have cancer? My father, I came home for Christmas, but I stayed a couple of extra days because he was to have surgery to find out the extent of his cancer. And I remember sitting in the window, just looking out and just saying, how is it that my dad and my aunt are here together in a hospital, both having cancer? And my father was a proud man, and he didn't want anybody to know except the immediate family. He didn't want people feeling sorry for him, and so he made us not tell anybody. So we were like, what are we going to do if we run into my aunt and her kids? She's got 10 kids, and we're roaming around the hospital. So we tried to stay in that room so they wouldn't see us, so we didn't have to come up with a story. But I was sitting there, and I kept saying, there's a reason. And I had no reason to think that. But I had decided that once I left there, I was going to return to Virginia, because that's where I now live, and get a physical. And when I got home, I told my husband, I said, there's a lot of cancer in Dickson, and I don't know, but I'm going to go get a physical. And even though I was teaching 5 aerobic classes a week, I had of my classes, but I'd fill in for others. And I was playing in 2 adult women basketball leagues. And I was probably the healthiest 41-year-old that I knew. But my gut told me something's wrong. And I went to the doctor. And to my surprise, I had stage 2 breast cancer. Never was sick. First mammogram. So ladies, get your mammograms. That was my first ever mammogram, and they found cancer. Especially if you know that you grew up in an environment that's not so healthy, or live in one now. But after I picked myself up and decided I was going to fight, I also decided that I was going to find out if there was a reason for people that lived in that area or grew up in that area, why there was so much cancer. And I began by my family, since my dad already had cancer, we were diagnosed 3 months apart, that my family convinced me that so that they didn't have to come to Virginia to check on me, that my daughter and I would move back to Dickson and let them take care of me and take care of her. And so while I was there, in between chemotherapy, I would go to the state and look through records. And one day I was there, and I I found 2 sets of letters. Because I grew up there and I knew who was white and who was black, I knew that the white letters said, "Don't drink your water." And the county ended up paying to get them off of their wells. The black people's letter said, "Your water is of good quality. There's something there, but it doesn't cause adverse health effects, and it is safe to drink." I took these letters to, well, first I went to the mayor. I worked for the city in the recreation department before I got married and moved away. So I knew the mayor and I knew the landfill director. I'd worked with them. It's a small town, you know everybody. And they all had this almost rehearsed answer. There's TCE there, but it doesn't hurt anybody. There's not enough there to hurt anybody. And at first I thought, that's exactly what the mayor said. So I took when I found that there was a difference in the letters, I took it to the media, and the media was great. They shined a light on what was going on down there. And then it really got bad. I started to get calls. One of the attorneys from the city, the county, told me that if I didn't stay off the TV, that they'd never help my family. And I had been so sick that day, chemotherapy, the cancer. I never felt anything from it. I had a lump, but it didn't bother me. Chemotherapy liked to kill me. At one point, I went through 5 surgeries in 6 months. When I moved from Dickson, from Virginia, the doctor said he had to do all the surgeries that the doctor in Virginia had already done. One of those procedures included they had to take a needle, and the needle had to go all the way through my breast to get to the bone, because they were shooting dye in there so they could see where the cancer had spread. But the thing about it was they hadn't come up with any type of pain pill they had to do it without any anesthesia, any pain pill. So they took this needle about this long, and one nurse stood here, and the other one stood here, and the doctor stood in front of me and pushed this needle all the way through to get that dye there. And I sat there and I said, if I live through this, somebody's going to be responsible. And they did that 6 times. And I lived through it. That was just the morning. That was before they put me to sleep and then cut out a big hunk of my chest. 4 years later, they came back because the cancer had come back. I decided I was going to fight, and I was, people were going to be held responsible. And I probably ran myself. I went anywhere I could. Anybody that said they, just give me 2 minutes to talk to them. I was on a plane. I've slept in airports. I've done whatever I could to get somebody to listen to me and somebody to help me. I guess the lowest point by far was when my father passed, because I felt that if I worked hard enough and I learned enough about TCE and about Dickson County and what we were dealing with, that in the beginning I didn't think there would be a lawsuit. I thought just educating them on how bad this chemical was and what it had done to the Eno Road community, and I knew that it was spreading. And they weren't interested. They weren't interested in helping my family. They weren't, because they weren't interested. I asked, some of my cousins, they don't have insurance. They they can't afford to find out if they're sick already. They weren't interested in helping whatsoever. And when I realized that they actually knew, there was like 1,400 documents that was on EPA's website that, you know, if I had access to them, so did these decision makers, and they didn't care. And so I realized that if they didn't care not only about me and Eno Road community, they didn't care about themselves, that they were in this state of denial, that they were comfortable being there because it meant first of all, my family was right, that there was a problem and that they weren't addressing it. And I think that was the ego part of it. I mean, money, I'm sure money played a major part of and I had been told that a lot of these decision makers got in a room together and they came up with they were going to do nothing. But once my father passed away, I first thought, okay, this is it. I fought hard to, maybe they would settle with us and we could, every member of my family would have took every dime, that penny that they'd give us in a settlement to find my dad the best doctors in this country, in another country. If it was enough to do that, my family would have done it in a heartbeat. But it was like after my dad passed, I didn't matter. And then I said, no, that means they get away with it. That means they killed my dad. And I can remember at his funeral just screaming, you know, they killed my daddy. You know, I'm just standing there screaming. I couldn't stop. That's all I could say was they killed my daddy. They killed my daddy. And again, I felt like, no, somebody's going to be responsible. And furthermore, at some point, and I had feelings all over the place, and I still do. There's some days I resent those people who sat back and let my family be called names, racial names. They said we was niggers trying to get money. And we were fighting to, in the end, those people are going to have clean water now. Their children are going to have clean water. But I had to put that aside. I had to deal with that, but I knew the right thing to do was to get it cleaned up or try to find somebody that understood. And I was at a environmental conference by Dr. Robert Bullard in 2004 or 5 maybe, after being very unhappy with where our case was. I started to visit universities around the Nashville area, and Dr. Robert Bullard's name just kept coming up, that the professors would tell me, because I watched the Erin Brockovich movie, and I took notes, and one of the things that she did was she went to the universities and got, different professors to tell her about the chromium, I think hexachromium or something like that. But so I said, okay, well, that's a way to find out. So I did. I called up these professors, and they were more than willing to. One day I spent like 4 hours with this professor. I had gathered all these documents from the state, and he was just so amazed, and he couldn't quit. So he was really getting into being able to help me, for one, and two, he was concerned. So he was telling me what everything meant. But he said, I really wish you could really reach Dr. Bullard. He travels a lot. He told me how I could find him. So I called, and I called for actually 6 months. There were students that worked in his office, and I'd say, can I talk to Dr. Bullard? And they'd be like, yeah. He told me later there's like 20, he'd get at least 20 calls a week of some community, just like me. And they'd say, no, he's not here. I said, well, can I leave a name? Yeah, if you wanna, and I knew he wasn't gonna get it. But God is good. And one day I called, and he actually answered the phone, and I said, can I speak to Dr. Bullard? And he said, speaking. And I said, Sheila Holt-Orsted, I got my water is contaminated, and So I go in to tell him about the case, and he said, where's this? And I said, I've got documents. I can send anything you want. And I sent him some things. And when he got them, he called me and he says, I'm going to come up there. I'm going to spend a couple of days going through these records. Because he later says he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that they left so many documents just right there for me to get. And I started, he came to town and he found stuff that I didn't even have. He found the set of documents where they actually, dogs that they were going to put to sleep, they had made sure and noted in their documents that they took care of the dogs, and the dogs were not going to be drinking contaminated water. But they let the black people drink the contaminated water. It's like Michael said, they came in at one point and they shut down a well. Our property is here. The landfill is here. Mind if I take your water? Let's give it back. And this is the landfill. This is our property. This is the landfill.
Someone's ears are
and
ringing
this
because her phone's ringing.
Okay, landfill, our property, DK21, which is a well that went out, I think at that time, maybe 30,000 homes. The county or state or somebody comes in, the well burned itself out, it stopped working, they came in, they fixed it, but they decided, they found TCE in it, and they shut it down. Our property is, Al, you saw it? It's
Stone's throw.
yeah, yeah. It's maybe 10 feet from the DK21 well to where our property line starts. But they shut the well down that went out to the 30,000 people. But they left my family and my cousins still drinking the water and was not concerned. The turn from my family becoming victims of environmental racism to us being victorious in our recent win is the lawyers, because they didn't care. I had rallies. They were a nuisance. I called in everybody I could think of. Al Sharpton promised to come. He didn't come, but we thought he was coming, and we told everybody Al Sharpton was coming, and Jesse Jackson at one time was coming. He was in the area the day we had my dad's funeral, and that was not the day. So we told him maybe we could get him back at some other time, but we just didn't have it in us that day. I didn't have the fight in me that day. But the turning point was I was at a conference held by Dr. Bullard and Dr. Beverly Wright down in New Orleans, and were you there, Al? Maybe. I know Eric Olson, some of you may know Eric. Eric was there because Eric was speaking, and I had met him earlier, Leslie Fields, if you guys know Leslie. I stalked the president of the
LDS.
The NAACP. They were having their national 50th conference in DC, and I heard that they were having the conference, so I went and sat in the motel, and my daughter had her down there too, and I showed her a picture what he looked like, and said, so we were sitting there, and a lady asked us what we were doing, and she was one of the people she was a member, and she said, I told her why we were there, and she said, oh, there's a lady, Leslie Fields, she works at NRDC, she's a lawyer, she can help you, and she's a real nice lady. So she gave me the number, I called Leslie, and she says, oh, Dr. Bullard talks about your case all the time, I'm very much aware. And I said, well, I'm concerned that, we need to get it cleaned up, because, I've been told that it's going to take 100 years to clean itself up, and I don't want another family to suffer the way my family suffered. We watched my father. I watched my daddy. I know the kind of pain I went through, and I shared with you guys the needle. Um, but my dad suffered. I saw him just shake one time. He couldn't even stand it. He shook so hard, and I couldn't. I knew. I started to get calls at some point of other people that lived in that Eno Road community, the white families. TCE is colorblind. This stuff was out there, and even though they were trying to get the white people off, they didn't get everybody. And I remember a father calling me, asking me, did I have any information on TC? And I told him yes. I said I actually printed off a lot of them. I didn't have a job. I was there because I was taking my chemo treatments. My husband would send me money, and I would take that money and make copies so that I could share with my neighbors, because a lot of them, this is rural America. People, they don't have computers. I'm not computer savvy, and I knew a lot of them didn't know how to operate, didn't know anything. So I made it very clear that I had printed off stuff about TCE, and if anybody wanted, and this father told me about his son that had leukemia, and he started to tell me how the child had suffered. And I've gotten angry at those people, but I've always known that the right thing to do was to try to help them, even if they didn't want the help, even if they didn't ever acknowledge it. And I have a hard time with that. I'll tell everybody. I at least thought it was decent that the ones that did recognize and know that there was a problem, that they could have just given a voice, and they couldn't do that. There's still places that can't do it. And very early in this fight, that line was drawn in the sand. You either stand with the Holts, black people over here, or you stand with the county and the city, and you keep your mouth shut and you don't support them. And they didn't. And again, I'm back to the lawyers. I had rallies, and I brought in people from other states, and we had great speaking. We had church. So y'all, you may go to church, but we had church at those meetings, and really good speakers. Dr. Bullard was always there, but there came a time where I knew that they either came numb to it, or they knew that we were a nuisance for the day, tied up traffic. We put our signs all over the county, but it came down to getting lawyers who would be our voices and fight and make the law be upheld. And that's where legal defense, George Barrett, Doug Johnson, and NRDC came in. And first it was the lead. We had an attorney before, and he didn't know the environmental law, and as a result, EPA escaped from all of this. But I was at a conference. I think I was talking about that. I was at a conference in Louisiana, Dr. Bullard, Dr. Wright, and Eric Olson was talking about what NRDC does and how they help communities. And I stood up in the middle of the meeting and I said, then why can't anybody help me? I said, you all agree that there's a problem, but nobody's helping me. And he said, we're going to help you. He said, we're going to help you. We're going to find you some help. And everybody started clapping. And Matthew Colangelo was in that room, and he came up to me, and I
This is Aaron's twin brother, Aaron Colangelo.
Yeah. And afterwards, he looked at me, and he said, I'm going to help you. I'm going to get you justice. And, you know, the look that he had in his eyes, it was fire. I remember calling home and saying, I've got a lawyer, we've got a lawyer. Because I had ran around, we fired the other guy, the first lawyer. We found out he had worked for the company we were suing twice. So we were out an attorney. I was calling up the company and thinking I was, and you know, I knew they were laughing at me later, but we had no attorney. And thank God, legal defense took the case. And 3 years later, 2000, a couple of years later, 2008, well, 1 year, because they took the case in 2007. On this journey, there's been a lot of highs and a lot of lows. One of the highs that I always like to talk about is after I realized that the county and city hated the media attention, I thought, well, they're not helping me, and I want people, after meeting Dr. Bullard and realizing that this is a national issue, that Dickson is just a statistic. I mean, there's many communities out there, and I felt like that not only did our story need to be told, but maybe these other communities would benefit from, you know, just knowing what we've been through and what people to avoid. They're not going to help you anyways. I went to national media, and as a result, People Magazine, Essence, CNN, the Washington Post, all covered the story. And as a result, someone took Hillary Clinton, a newspaper that the Post did. The Post did a wonderful the story, and they sent a photographer, and she did a pictorial a story. And then they actually went with me to my doctor and took pictures. And but as a result, Hillary Clinton read the story, and I'm proud that she told me that my story inspired her, something that she wanted to do for a long time, but she was going to do it, and she called the first ever in this country a Senate hearing on environmental justice. And so I just want to end by saying thank NRDC, because without you and without the other lawyers, George Barrett, Doug Johnson, and the legal defense, the Colangelos, I think Matthew told me that they spent Christmas Day one Christmas going through boxes of documents. And I think Al and Michael and Selena later on, I remember which holiday it was, but you did the same thing. They told me there were so many thousands of documents that they had to go through that they split them up. And you took away from your families to help us, and we appreciate it. There was a part of me, because I could see this fight inside Mitch, that I was wanting, I really wanted to see Mitch slam some people in court.
So Mitch.
I knew it was in there. We had a mediation. Was it earlier this year or last year? Or last March. And you're sitting in that room for hours on top of hours, and I'm just watching everybody, and it was like, wow, this I have a real dream team of lawyers. Thank you, Jesus, that I really been blessed to have, to have the legal representation that I've had, and to. Because my mom will even tell you, I'm not the easiest person to get along with. I'll admit it. I apologize. But we all lived through it. and I'll get a T-shirt if y'all want me to. But it's like I said, it's had its bittersweet times, and I have to share this with Rebecca. The county decided that, NRDC came in and they had all this scientific evidence. One of the things, Mr. Barrett, one of the civil rights lawyers in Tennessee, he said one day, he said, these NRDC people, they're just brilliant. They're just really smart. They could figure it out because the company is saying they didn't put TCE in their, or PCE in the landfill. They may have disposed of some cans. Well, NRDC is smart enough to figure it out, even if you don't have any in there, that the residue that is left inside the can after you can't spray it anymore still adds up. And I was like, wow, those guys are smart. They're really smart. Well, they started not to play fair after they realized what they were dealing with Michael, Selena, and Rebecca, and MITCH now, and all of you guys too. But once they realized that, they started playing dirty. They actually came on our farm. They got a warrant from a judge that gave them the permission to come on our property and drill like they were drilling for oil. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to come on the property, and they ran over trees. They just were a nuisance, and it was really hard for them to accuse my dead father and my dead grandfather of anybody could dump anything on our property for $5. That was the word around town, and that people took advantage of that, and we actually made our own self sick because my father and grandfather let anything that was dumped there was because we let them do it. It was not true. After, was it 3 or 4 days? I don't remember.
Ask Rebecca.
Rebecca, 3 or 4 days?
I think it was 4 days.
Okay, 4. Rebecca, NRDC was smart enough to know that what they were dealing with, and I'll leave it at that they had a lawyer, a tester, I don't know what his specialty is, but somebody that tested water, and a video person that videoed everything. And Rebecca became very upset with them because the judge had told them, that they had these camera people, and they wanted them to be able to follow them along. Well, they decided there's 150 acres there. So they'd start way over here and way over here, and that they couldn't watch them all. So Rebecca started reminding them that you couldn't do this. These people, the judge told you. So one of the guys gets in her face and says, "What are you gonna do? You're gonna call the U.S. Marshal on me?" And I think at some point they did call up some lawyer that came in and said, "You can't do this, and you're not gonna push me around." So, but Rebecca was so angry. She tells me, "Rebecca, do you want me to tell it?"
I have no idea what you're gonna say.
Well, we're at the well because they decided they wanted to retest our well because they said, "Oh, it's been 10 years." Well, I don't know what years was at that time, but the TCE may have just filtered its own self. So then you don't have a case because there's no more TCE in your well. Because we were on municipal supply at that time. So they were like, "Well, if it's not there anymore, you don't have a case." Well, they were sitting there and it was hot, and I had a big old thing of ice, and I'm giving it to all our lawyers, everybody except their lawyers, and their testers, and all their stuff, and we're sitting there just drinking out of water, and so one of the lawyers said, "Can I get some of that water?" I marched right over to that well where the TCE was. And Rebecca's going, "Sheila, no, Sheila, no. You can't do this. I'm calling Michael. I said, what's she going to say? It's contaminated? I bet she won't, not with that camera on her. So she's like, you don't do that. She says, I think it's best you just stay in your mom's house and just not come out here. Well, he puts his hand in her face and says, I'm going to call the U.S. Marshal. What, you want me to call? You're going to call one on me? What are you going to do about it? She comes back there. She goes, Sheila, get him. Just get him.
She wanted to come out of the house then.
But that was one of the funny moments of it. But
I'll just
anyways.
point out for the lawyers that if you thought Rule 34, the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, was just a dry procedural rule, it's actually can be very exciting.
But again, I just want to say thank all of you for everything you've done, because it took all of this and more to get what we got, and we know without the NRDC being in, I believe, without NRDC playing a role in being a part of this lawsuit, it would have been very, very difficult and we would not have. It probably would have been at least several more years of drawing out. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I am forever grateful for all of you. Thank you.
So we want to hear from Beatrice a little here, because Sheila can't get away with telling all the great stories. So what was this like from seeing all this unfold from your perspective, and seeing Sheila grow into this fighter?
Wow.
She already was, I guess.
Yeah, she was from a little girl. But I want to thank NRDC and all of our great lawyers. That's at home. That's what we call them, our dream team, because that's what they were. But I'm not like Sheila. She didn't get it from me, because I'm a crier. Just look over me. Because it has been hard. I had my husband from age 16 for 46 years. We had a great marriage. He was a great husband, a wonderful father, a great provider. And when all this come about in 2003, and he was diagnosed with cancer, we found out we had that poison in our water, and he got very sick, and I had to deal with that, and that was very hard. It's like Sheila says, he was a very personal man. He didn't like people knowing his business, and that was everything. I mean, home business or sickness or whatever, he never told anybody. Didn't tell me all of it. He had a long, hard cancer sickness. And it was back and forth to the doctor, back and forth to the doctor. It was very hard on him and I. But we worked at it. And then Sheila came down with hers. I think the worst of this was that my husband, that was the worst tragedy, and he passed away. And then Sheila came down with the battle of it, and I went back and forth with him and going through all the chemo with him, and that was, like I say, very hard. And then she came down with it, and it was, she had it hard too. That story she was telling, that's why I cried a while ago, because I remember she come back, and she said, Mama, that was the worst pain I ever had in my life. Said that nurse just stood up on me and stuck that needle, and I just boo-hooed then. I said, oh, baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I said, but you know what? It's all to help you. It's all to help you. And you know, she seemed like she forgot about that pain. She did. She seemed like she just forgot about it. It's all to help you. It's going to get better. And it did. But I was up and down the road with her, and she was much like her daddy. We would go, we got an interstate 40 to go to Nashville to the doctor. And we have just a straight road, 70. And I said, well, we'll go I said, we'll go to interstate, we'll go faster. And she said, no, Mama, go 70. Because sometimes I had to work and some of the friends or somebody would care, and she says, we'll go 70. And because interstate you can't pull off all the time, and we go 70, and when I get sick or something, you can pull over. I said, oh, we'll just take a bag. I said, that's what everybody does, just take a bag, and if you get sick, I don't have to pull over. And she said, oh, no, and I just ignored her, you know. And I was driving on one day, and she was getting sick, and she said, Mama, pull over. And I said, no, you got the bag. And she says, no, pull over. And I pulled over. She had so much pride that she didn't want, you know, to upchuck in the car, in the bag. And she got out. But we made it. She's a go-getter, not a quitter. She has, you know, some people ask me, said, has it been times that you just gotten tired and just want to give up? I said, well, yeah, I have, but Sheila hadn't. So I'm standing behind her all the way. I'm pushing her, if you know. I said, if she falls by the roadside doing this, I know this is what she wanted to do. She wanted to fight this battle. And she fought it. And this is the reason why that this has turned out the way it has. Because she fought and got these good lawyers. That's the reason why. She got our dream team. And that's why it turned out like it did. And we just want to thank you all. From the bottom of our hearts, everybody that's had a part in this. Because it hasn't been easy. It hasn't. I mean, just every day, you know, like I said, I had my husband 46 years. He did everything. I didn't. When I lost him, I didn't know which way to go. I didn't pay a bill. People would come, going to cut stuff off because I forgot to pay it. I forgot to pay it. And I never did have that to do. And it was, you know, it's still hard, but the Lord will make a way. I have faith. I'm a Christian lady. God is good all the time. So,
I want to thank you guys for your work, because we know our government has a long ways to go, and you know, I should have been able to go to these government agencies and say, this is what's went on, and they take care of it. But for now, we have NRDCs and we have legal defense who are still having to fight the fight. And, you know,
we do.
I hope that I can continue. My doctors told me that there's no medical reason why I'm still alive. But I know it is so that I can tell my story and so that I can share so that other people don't have to go through this.
And I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, what we've been through. And now, because of what NRDC has done, maybe no one else will have to, because they've done great things in Dickson, not just for us, not just the whole family, the community, county, Dickson County. They're putting a lot of people on good water, well, getting them off of the well water. They couldn't afford to, get on well water. It was a lot of people who couldn't, and now, because of NRDC, they're going to be able to be put on well water. And it's going to be monitored over there. Maybe we'll get fresher, better air or something because of what NRDC has done. They've done great things in Dickson, and we can't thank them enough. I'm saying NRDC, but we're thankful for all our lawyers. But NRDC did a lot of work on the landfill. So we're thankful. And I'm just what did they say a while ago? A stone throw from the landfill. My land is. And I feel better now that, when I go outside, I look over there at it and I say, well, some people ask me, say, how you think your husband would feel now? I said, he would feel good. I said, because when he was sick and they took us off of the water, and they paid the water bill for a while. And then they decided that was too much. They weren't going to pay it anymore. So we went to city meetings and county meetings, and my husband got up at one meeting and tried to talk to them about, he said, I bowed my well. I had good well water until you all poisoned it. And I think you should pay my water bill. And he was just going into some things, and one of the councilmen said, your time is up. Your time is up, Mr. Holt. He said, well, I'm not finished yet. Well, your time is up. And he had an officer lead him off the floor to sit him down because he didn't want the people to hear it, what he was saying about the water. So if my husband was alive today, he would be jumping up and clapping his hand that NRDC got someone to take responsibility for this. So, thank you all again.
Thank you, Sheila. So we've got like 20 minutes, and now's the part where, part of this is to also give everyone a chance to interact with them. And if anyone has questions that you want to, Mitch and I will bully them.
I'll advise you.
But maybe we can start in New York, so we're in the New York office here right now, and they're here, but then we'll go to the other offices. But does anyone, George right over here, George Black? Is in,
One thing that's interesting about this is it's unusual. You've got two, as I understand it, two suits going on together, three. And there's an NRDC track, and we have our specialty, and there's the NAACP Legal Defense Fund track. Could you, maybe both the lawyers here and you from your perspective, talk about the NAACP legal track here and how the things are related to each other?
Well, there's a civil rights lawsuit, and the civil rights lawsuit was brought because they informed the white families of the contamination, and they took steps that they didn't take for the black families. And one of them was the state came out and bought personnel, sat them down, told them what was in the wells, gave them an option of whether to put a filter on their wells, on their wells, and or to just get completely off. And they paid for it, or the company paid for it, but that didn't happen with the Holt family.
So also, just further on that, essentially there were two companion lawsuits. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund represented the Holts in the civil rights case, in which, as Sheila said, the allegation was that there was disparate treatment based on race. But since there was an environmental component, there was still this contamination that had to be dealt with. Civil rights case really didn't address that, and so the NAACP was eager for us to bring a companion environmental case to deal with the contamination, which we did. So those are the two companion cases. As Michael described, our case was under a federal statute that permits the abatement of an endangerment, or authorizes a court to order the abatement of an endangerment to health or the environment. And the NAACP case, Illegal Defense Fund case, involved race discrimination.
And was there actually, or is there still direct collaboration of any kind, or are they simply on separate legal tracks where, I mean, maybe you're not even permitted under law to, how far is the cooperation?
There was a lot of cooperation between our lawyers and the lawyers from the NAACP. The mediation that Sheila referred to involved both cases together, so we were all involved in that together. That mediation didn't work, but it was still a collaborative effort. And there was quite a lot of, in the end, strategizing and other cooperation. But the cases were separate. They were actually before different judges in federal district court in Nashville. And they were on different tracks. Our case was on a faster track. We were set to go to trial last December. The civil rights case was not yet ready for trial.
And is there any bar to the material that NRDC would acquire through discovery, through research, through scientific data, being usable in their case? Because presumably they had to work on the same basis of the same information.
No, no bar.
I was just going to ask, well, first of all, I was going to thank you both for sharing your fortitude, your presence, your story. It's personal, but I don't feel like there's been a dry eye in this room since you started talking. And I wanted to just ask you how your health is, and your family and your community behind. Where do things stand just in terms of your health?
I'm due, but I'm not going to claim anything bad. It's time to go get another physical, but I feel great, but I've other than chemotherapy, I've never been sick. I never, even when it came back a second time, I didn't know. I was walking and, exercising and just never felt bad. So that's not really an indicator, but as far as I know, I'm doing good.
Beatrice.
Oh, you asking me?
I don't know who's been affected, so.
Well, we really feel like my whole family has.
Yeah.
I have diabetes, and I have ulcers. I have bad knees. I've had knee replacement 15 years ago, and I'm going to have it done again starting next month. I'm going to get one done. And I have had, I keep a check on it, cervix polyps, and I keep a watch on it. And my other children, they have a lot of ailments. My two daughters at home, they have both have high blood pressure and stomach problems, and I have one going to have surgery Monday. She has thyroid problems, and my son has a blood deficiency. Is that
His
what you call
immune
it?
disorder.
An immune disorder. He has to take pills, B12, to keep it in his body. It won't stay. He just has to take a lot of B12 pills. And my grandchildren have different ailments. So we really think it's from drinking the water, because it's a lot of people in the community that we're related to, and they don't have it. I mean, they didn't drink the water. And I mean, you know, some people say, well, maybe it's a family thing, but it's my grandchildren and my children, because we think we was right there drinking the water all this time. So that's how I feel about that.
So we have other offices. I mean, you can see them as little dots up here, but maybe the San Francisco office. Are there any questions from folks there?
Well, hi, I'm GINA Solomon. I'm a scientist in the San Francisco office. I just wanted to say something about TCE because this chemical has been around for a really long time, and it affects a lot of communities around the country. And so the story that we're all hearing today is being repeated all over the country. This chemical was dumped similarly on the ground nationwide, very popular solvent, still used, unfortunately. The good news is that just a few months ago, the EPA finally declared it a known human carcinogen and really tightened their risk assessment so that the allowable levels everywhere, including in water, are probably going to go down, more toxic than it was even believed to be just a few years ago. Some people may remember Woburn, Massachusetts, where there was a childhood leukemia cluster just north of Boston several decades ago that was immortalized in the book and movie A Civil Action. And now there's about 60 male Marines at Camp Lejeune, or who have lived at Camp Lejeune and drunk the water there, that have been diagnosed with male breast cancer. So this is, we could chase TCE around the country and find just one place after another where it's really affecting people's health. So I think it's really important to recognize that this sort of has a ripple effect, so I'm so glad that we're able to bring justice to Dickson, and I'm curious whether you've connected Sheila and Beatrice with other communities around the country where TCE has been a problem, if you're talking with the folks in those communities and helping them to get justice too.
Wish they had our dream team.
Too bad we can't clone you guys.
We actually, Michael and Selena have a kind of a light docket right
now. He didn't respond.
Almost from the beginning, and I think sometime I had a minister that after I was diagnosed and I came back home, and he was actually classmate of mine. He was a little bit younger, but he was close to my age. And I was going to his church, and he said something about feeling sorry for what I was going through. And I said, this is just not fair. Why why is this happening to me? And he said something to the effect of that what better person? I was healthy. I exercised. I ate right. You know, everybody that knew me knew I was Miss Tennessee bodybuilder. You know, so they saw me as this picture of health. So when they heard that I was sick, they didn't think, you know, that it was because I did drugs, or they didn't think it was something I did. They automatically thought, here's somebody that's taking care of her health. It must be something out there. It must be something in the water. So he said, he said, as soon as I started to stop feeling sorry for myself and answer my calling, or something to that effect, that I was going to be at peace with what had happened to me. Well, I'm not really at peace with what's happened to me, but he was right. Once I started to, get calls, because I go and speak at universities. Communities will call and say, "Can you come? We need to hear people need to hear your story," because they're still thinking EPA is going to ride in on the cavalry and help them, and they need to know that EPA wrote the letters. It was on their letterhead that sent you the letters. And I said, I can do it better than that. I can bring the letters with you, and I can show them, that EPA wrote us the letters. But so just from the very beginning, that's what we did. We did, I can remember I couldn't eat for like a week. I would go for like 4 days of just throwing up, just the smell of food. My family was ready to put me out on the curb, and because I couldn't, the kids would try to sneak fries or something in during that week. If I could be in my room asleep, and I would know when somebody walked in the door with food, and I'd just start throwing up. And I got a call, and it was during that, because I got it every 3 weeks, and then it'd start all over. I'd get about well enough to go look to the state to go look for documents, and then it was time to go back and get another dose of chemo. But I got a call from some of the residents that lived in the Laurel Hills, which is one of the closest subdivisions to the landfill, and they said, we're trying to have a meeting. We know we've seen you and your family on TV, and can you come tell us? We're really trying to get answers. And I went to the meeting, and I told them everything that I knew, and I started to leave, and I just got so weak that somebody had to take me home, because I felt strong, even though I knew physically I was sick and I probably shouldn't have went. My mom wasn't home because she was always watching me and telling me what I could and couldn't do. But she wasn't home that day, and I kept telling her, you can't drive me home. You have to leave immediately, because if my mom sees that you drove me home, she's gonna be on me. And but it felt so good to be able to help them and to educate them on what was going on, that I know that's what I'll do the rest of my life, that I will advocate for communities for the rest of my life. This is my calling.
So we have time for about one more question. Does anyone have a burning question? Is there a hand raised?
Yeah, Joel.
Joel in LA. He's in our Los Angeles office.
Hi, Joel.
Hi, I'm Joel Reynolds. I'm a lawyer in the Los Angeles office. It's such a remarkable story, amazingly told, an inspirational story, and I'm so glad that NRDC is a part of the story.
I am too.
And I know all of us feel the same way, because you really did have a dream team of lawyers, and we all know that about our colleagues. My question is this, and it's a serious question. We're based out here near Hollywood, but I think it's a story that, deserves to be told to a much wider audience. You mentioned the Aaron Brockovich story, which was a very good one. And this, and then the Woburn civil action story, also very good. This one is at least as good a story. And, I'm just wondering whether there's been any thought or any conversations about actually turning it into a film that millions of people could hear. I think that the story deserves to be told at that level, and I think it has everything about it that would make it interesting to a film company. And I know we have contacts out here that I think that we could connect you up with. But I'm just curious whether that's already happened, and I really believe that it should happen. And then finally, thank you very much for coming and telling us the story.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
I agree. We kind of laugh about it. We
Who would play Sheila? MITCH? Tommy Lee Jones?
I agree. I think my cable was acting really crazy this week, or my satellite, and it wouldn't work, and so I pulled out some old movies, and I actually watched the civil action I know 5 times this week. But now, because when the first lawyer that we met with told us all our homework was to go home and watch a civil action, and I did, and I watched it, and it was a very good movie. I liked it, but now watching it, now a lot of the stuff that I wouldn't have even connected with, now I hear, I know what it means. But I think the thing that's different about our story than the civil action and the Aaron Brockovich is that they were told by people that weren't the victims themselves. They were advocating on their behalf, but I don't think because there's even the movie by that Steven Seagal has an environmental one. Anybody seen the Steven Seagal one? Oh, you have? Yeah, it's a good one too. But that one's a good one too, but even then it's still not from the victims, and we have a story to be told also. So,
Joe, do you know any good screenwriters in LA?
Yeah, no, we should talk about it, seriously. I do have somebody in mind that would be good to have this conversation with. And
Joel,
I think
call
it would
me.
be very good to get this story out into a much wider market.
And there's so many elements of this case that people would have to think we just made it up, but and just the low down side of how people would sit in a theater and go, this is not America.
Didn't happen.
They just threw this in there, and it's not. I mean, we wouldn't have to make up anything. Just telling it the way it has happened. What do they say? Truth is stranger than fiction. Well, that's this case because, I just so many times my family got to where, not only did they, I when I was going through the chemo, my doctor just gave me this whole list of prescriptions to take. And I remember telling her that I couldn't I threw up for a week and I couldn't eat. And she's like, "Oh no, that you can't do that. You got to eat." So she gave me this whole. And when I got to the pharmacy, I said, "What's this one for? And what's this one for?" And she's like, "Well, this $120 prescription is for your mom, to keep you calm." And I was like, huh? Yeah. I said, well, I don't feel that one. Don't feel that one because I said I have my religion and I have.
Your mom disagrees.
She's probably gonna tell you the story of it.
I said I have my family, I have my religion, and I'm gonna get through this, but I don't need this medicine. And my family contacted her and said, can we chop it up and put it in her food?
She threw everybody around the room one night. I mean, we couldn't say anything to calm her down. She did. Everybody was trying to calm her down. She's throwing everybody around. Everybody.
So,
Well, I'm glad you didn't calm her down completely.
Well, I am too. I am too.
So I'm sure we want to do this all day if we could, which is not fair to you guys. But I think it's 2 o'clock, and I'm sorry the other offices didn't get a chance to get a question in. But thank you for coming. Thank you for.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, you all are the one that deserve to thank you.
Yeah. This is the best medicine for me. This
Yes,
is better than any pill.
Yes.